Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast, kicking off another week, and it is game week as Illinois takes on Eastern Illinois. Late kickoff on Thursday night, 8 p.m. on Big Ten Network. And our guy, J Leman, All-American linebacker, will be on the call for Big Ten Network. So, Jay, I figured we'd have you on, preview the game. We're going to get some questions from the fans as well. But here we are. We're in game week. How's it feel for you now? Because even as someone in the media, this is an exciting time because you finally get to see football again.
I mean, because especially if you cover college sports, I mean, there's really a dead time from, depending on how good your baseball and spring sports are, there's really a dead time from into May to now where not a lot of stuff's going on. If you're creative like you guys at Illini Inquirer, you guys create a ton of content no matter what. But, man, it's a lot easier when you can create content around games and around people that are playing. And so it's game time. It's game week. I don't care who you are. If you're a college football fan, or played college football, this week is always a special week to you going into Labor Day weekend because you have football starting Thursday through Monday. And there's just nothing like college football. I mean, the NFL is the NFL, but there's something unique still about college football, and you got to love it. It's as American as it gets.
What are vibes as a player? And I think you had Missouri every time, so it might have felt a little bit different. But what were your vibes as a player going from end of camp week to game week? Like, what is the vibe shift there?
Oh, it's a total shift because you go from just pounding on each other and pounding on the same plays, the same kind of drills over and over again. It's a real grind from even spring ball, winter workouts, and all the way into camp. You're really competing for that spot, right? So if you're on the ones list coming into this game week, which the game week actually started probably Friday for both of these teams because they back it up like Fridays and Monday because they're playing 2 days prior to, when they would usually play. So they back it up, and Friday's like a Sunday, but you're in that and you get to face somebody different and you go against scout teams. So practices are a little lighter. You're more focused on mentally on how is Eastern Illinois going to attack me? What are they going to do rather than I got to beat this guy to win this spot. No, I have this spot. I've got to perform. And it's a much more focused kind of like, this is what my thing is for this week. I'm going to put this game plan away for next week when we play Kansas. And so it's much more focused on how they're going to attack you and a much lighter practice schedule than a camp schedule would be.
Yeah, so Illinois, I know Illinois fans are probably nervous for any game, right? When you open a season because you don't know what you have as a team, but Illinois is 18-0 all time against FCS opponents, wins by an average about 30 points per game. But what does have to be the mindset, Jay? Because you're bigger, stronger, faster, deeper, but you still have to play the game and you still have to win the game.
I've always thought that you've got to put away the game in the first half. I think the longer you let somebody hang around, kind of like a March Madness Cinderella thing, like the longer they stick around, I think you really see it in the NCAA tournament. You see the team start to get the overdog, the favorite team start to get tight and play tense, okay? Or maybe something's going on, something's wrong, the quarterback's hurt, or the point guard, and that's the big man is really good, is in foul trouble. And you see these other players for FCS teams or underdogs start to play at a level where they believe I'm just as good or better than these guys. And they get this confidence, and they're playing with confidence, and you're playing with less confidence, and the teams kind of even out. So I think you got to put them away early to kind of just be safe. And you want to get your other guys. First of all, you want to get the wins, but you'd love to get some reps for some live reps for your backups because you will need them at some point during the season. They will have to go in, and you're going to have to say, man, I really don't want your first live rep to be against Oregon at Autzen Stadium where I can't hear a thing, and this is my first live rep of college football. That can be really, really tough.
Yeah, if there's like a goal of this game, it's to get Donovan Leary actual game reps. Like he's never had game reps, and he's your backup quarterback. And at some point, based on history, Jay, he's going to have to play some meaningful snaps this year.
We've seen that at Illinois, right? Now we think the offensive line is going to be a strength of this football team. So we hope that Altmaier, is not on his back that much, but he likes to run the football. He's going to take hits, and even in the NFL, there's a lot of guys that have to come in for a game or two, for a couple series to spot people. So you got to have a backup that is serviceable. We've been lucky enough to have some decent backups, and Art Sitkowski was certainly serviceable. I don't think he would win many games for you, but get you through a game like he did against Iowa. And so that could happen this year. John Paddock obviously won us a game and was more than serviceable.
All right, Jay. So offensively, what does EIU do, and what are the keys for the Illini defense to take care of business?
So EIU, when it comes to their offenses, MJ Flowers is the guy that they want to get the ball to as far as running goes. He was an all they called it a Big South OVC now because they kind of combine conferences. There's been conference realignment at the FCS level as well. Most people don't realize that. And I will say that I believe the Missouri Valley and the Big Sky Conference probably the best FCS football out there right now. But OVC has some teams, and Eastern Illinois was a team that was a Final Four team left out of the playoff last year. So they went from 2 wins in 2022 to 8 wins last year, and have a guy in MJ Flowers. They want to run the football. Coach Wilkerson wants to run the football, but they have a guy in Pierce Holly, their quarterback. He's a transfer from Georgetown, threw for 2,700 yards last year, took every snap for them. Them and their center took every snap, and is a player that can make a lot of plays. They got Mirza on the outside, Eli Mirza, the receiver. He was a transfer as well, and out of Cal, transferred, and he's probably their biggest weapon on the outside. So a vastly improved offense. But make no mistake, they want to run the football, and Holly is. You wouldn't say he's a great arm. You wouldn't say he's super mobile, but you would say this: he's a gamer. A lot of moxie. Has won some games there for him, and really the unquestioned leader. And I think you'll be surprised by the size of their offensive line. And they really don't have a guy under 300 pounds. They've got one guy, I believe, Joseph Solomon, who's a former brother of Adam Solomon at U of I guy, who's 295, but everybody else is 305, 310, 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". And so this is not your typical FCS offensive line. And so they're going to want to pound it. And if I'm Eastern Illinois, you've seen a lot of Illinois football on tape, right? To know that Illinois has in its past played man-to-man coverage, right? So it's like, will they try to take advantage of that? I don't know, but I think MJ Flowers is their guy that they want to get going as far as running the football and controlling the line of scrimmage.
I would imagine. I mean, this offensive line really struggled last year to protect Holly. 35 sacks, I believe, in 11 games. One of the worst in the country. So imagine they want to get the ball out quick, Jay. So is wrapping up tackling, is that the most important thing? Because I would imagine, like, when you have bigger, stronger, faster guys, you want to make them have 12 plays in the scoring drive, not 5 or 6.
Sure, yeah. I think the biggest thing is when you're an FCS team, you want to play assignment football, and you might not get the push that you're looking for on the offensive line, maybe the protection, but you want to get a hat on a hat, right? You want to give your guys a chance. And I think what's good about MJ Flowers is he's a guy that he can make somebody miss. If somebody's not accounted for, he can make somebody miss. And I think one thing that Holly did a really good job of last year, despite all the sacks, is they protected the football well, right? They didn't turn the ball over much. And on defense, they caused 25 turnovers, which was near the tops of the FCS. So they protect. Usually when you give up a lot of sacks, you're going to have a lot of turnovers. That wasn't the case for EIU. And so I think for them, it's, hey, let's run the football because that's who we are. And let's take our shots when we have a chance. And let's just play our assignment. If we can't overpower people, let's give our guys a chance by getting a hat on a hat.
Defensively, what does EIU do? Because that's kind of where they were really strong last year. And what are the keys for the Illini offense going up against them?
Yeah, so they've got some real dudes at the defensive line position. I believe it's Trajan Lewis is kind of their go-to guy. I mean, very productive, but they've got some other guys as well that can really bring it off of the edge. And so that's a defensive line. I think you're going to say, okay, wow, they've got a little more juice than most defensive lines at the FCS level. This is a defense that brings back 8 starters, including their entire front 7. They lost 2 All-American defensive backs, but they hit the portal hard. Got a Houston transfer and Moses Alexander and different players that have helped them at the defensive back position. And so can they get the turnovers they got last year? I mean, 25 turnovers, we know that's hard to repeat because you have to have some luck, right? That's over 2 turnovers a game. But they've got their full front 7 back. They've got they've also got some transfer help. And their best linebacker, Elijah Tolbert, he actually hit the portal to go to Missouri State, wanted to go to a Power 4 school, ended up in Missouri State, then came back. He was an all-conference performer last year as well. And so he's back. And so they have some guys that at the FCS level that have played really well. And I would argue have the experience that put them on par with some of the Illinois defensive players. Like they have a lot of production. And so they're going to try to, of course, stop the run like every defense does. But they're going to bring pressure and try to cause chaos to create turnovers. And so I think you'll see a lot of that from that defense. And hopefully Illinois offensively is ready for that pressure.
What are the players you're most interested to see for Illinois perform in this game, Jay?
Well, I think I hate to be the guy that just says Luke Altmaier, but I want to see how he plays in year two. I think my anticipation for Zachary Franklin. I don't know if I'm like a kid on Christmas that I snuck into my mom's closet and I know that I got this big gift, right? So I know that it's coming. I see it wrapped under and I have these expectations and I hope it's as good as I think it's going to be. But sometimes you get that big gift and it's like, it's good, for a couple of days. And, but then you get that one gift, the Ocarina of Time by Zelda or something like that, which was like the game back in the day. And you're like, this game is amazing. You play it for like years and years. I'm geeking out a little bit on Zelda. Sorry for the Zelda reference there, but you get some great gift. And so I'm looking forward to Zachary Franklin because I feel like this guy's got the most production in D1 football of any receiver, 3,300 yards, 40 starts. He's got to see the ball early and often. I would be shocked if we didn't see him touch the ball in the first 5 plays, right? I'd be shocked if Caden Fagan didn't touch the ball in the first 5 plays. I'd be shocked if Pat Bryant didn't get a look in the first 5 plays, right? You want to get it to your ball carriers, so your ball players, rather. Then I want to see, is J.C. Davis as good as they said he's going to be, right? I've been hearing a lot of things about J.C. Davis, so I'm looking forward to him. Will he be challenged as much as he's challenged against other teams? Probably not. And then also, how does the right side of the offensive line fare? I mean, we know that Geske has got a lot of experience and Cruz is going to be healthy. What is the right side look? Does Melvin Priestley hold up? Does Henderson help out? Who's really going to be the right guard for us? Who's that guy slotted in? So I think all of those things, and I want to see Fagan be healthy and Aiden Lawfrey pop off 1 or 2. So that's what I want to see from an offensive perspective. Who I want to see play, which is basically everybody, but that was in the order.
No, but like you just rattled off names, Jay, where it's like I have confidence. Like those are some playmakers. And Eastern Illinois, I think they got one more Power 4 game, but like those are some of the best players they're going to play.
Western in week 3, yes.
Yeah, so it's like those are some of the best players they're going to go up against. And I want to see Illinois, the offensive line, if it's taking a step forward, they should impose their will, right? Like they should have a good game. And Caden Fagan, Aiden Lawfrey, I think Josh McCray is going to get a steady dose. It wouldn't surprise me if he ended up with like 80 yards in this game. Like that's what you want to see. And I agree. I think Zachary Franklin's going to be very good. And you just want Luke Altmaier to be poised. And you want him to be disciplined, right? Like you have to beat yourself for Eastern Illinois to have a chance in this game in the second half.
Sure. You would think that Illinois could run the football every down and win this football game. That's what you would think that could happen. Now we want to work a lot of different things. Right. We want to get into situations. I don't think it's all that bad to get into red zone situations or 3rd and short situations or backed up situations. I'd rather it not be close, but you could also make the argument that you get a win in a close game, and that does some different things. But so you want to get a lot of situations knocked off. You want to get a punt situation where Hugh Robertson puts him inside the 5-yard line. You want to work those situations in live against somebody else. And I want to see. I'm super interested as well in this game, and I know we're going to shift to this and talk to this about a little bit, is the adjustment game from the coaches with the new technology that's on the field. For those of you who don't know, there's going to be like 18 tablets on each sideline, okay, that can show you in real time a play that just happened 1 minute ago, which is a huge advantage for a defense. I mean, I know this happens at high schools where they're already looking at plays, and the NFL's had pictures and tablets for a long time. College football's had nothing. We've had whiteboards and a guy up on a phone that belongs in your grandma's house that, is like talking and say, hey, I saw this from the box. This is what they were doing. And you're kind of putting the pieces together off of seeing a picture one time. And now we're going to be able to see, okay, from a defensive perspective, hey, they ran power this way and they blocked me this way in this formation. Hey, if they had success for it, they're going to come back to it because an offense is going to script the first 15 plays of the game. Whatever they have success for, if they have success on play 2, play 3, play 10, play 13, and play 15, you're going to see a principle of that later on in the game, maybe dressed up in a different formation. And how are you going to address that and recognize that as a defender? Offensively, you're going to see different looks, different fronts, different blitzes, and say, okay, now that I see that again on film, I saw it one time on film, how do I adjust? So I think it puts the onus on the coaches to say, okay, here you go. And coaches are either going to be better or worse because of the technology. Those that can take advantage of it, we could be a lot better. If you're great at making adjustments in game, it's going to help you a lot. If you're not, it's not going to be a big advantage. It's going to be a disadvantage for you.
Yeah, Jay, I want to ask you because, I mean, we have all these new rules, and I wonder, does it benefit one side of the ball more than the other? Like, is it more beneficial to have the video if you're an offensive guy or defensive guy, or does that matter? I mean, you're both just basically it's both are adjusting throughout the game, right?
Yeah, both are adjusting, but I think always a defense is always reactionary, right? So the more information a defense can get to help them respond, I think it helps the defense. And I believe, and I could be proven wrong, I believe we will see scoring drop minimally this season, maybe 1 or 2 points from what it was in 2023, because I believe we're going to have enough adjustments on there that's going to create another turnover every 4 games than what would have been there. That's going to create a stop on third down because we know what we're looking for on a better level. I could make the argument that the NFL doesn't have as much scoring because there's better adjustments and better, ways to contain because they know what's going on more. Maybe that's true. It's also a shorter football game, the way the clock works in the NFL. So I think it's going to minimize scoring a little bit, not a ton. I think it's an advantage to the defense. I think if you have a cerebral quarterback, I think it helps a lot. I think it, in a way, it gives a slight advantage, not an advantage, but helps a non-athletic smart team a little bit more than it does just an athletic, I don't know what I'm doing making plays, because I can adjust and react as I have more information. The more information I have that the other team doesn't have, then I can play at a higher level against a higher level athlete than I could if we both have the same amount of information. I hope that makes sense. And
I'm wondering, like, there's some guys, I mean, even when I played in the high school level, like I could swim in information and think too much at times. Like some guys might not like it as much, I would imagine. Right? Like having too much information, you can be paralyzed by it.
Well, I mean, we used to say, and no knock on cornerbacks, so take this the right way. Cornerbacks are the hardest position to play, but the easiest to coach. Because here's the deal. You're either a great corner or you're not. And, we always used to talk about Vontae Davis. His favorite coverage was cat coverage, which was, you got that cat, I got that cat. Just you tell Vontae who to guard. God rest his soul. We miss Vontae Davis. He passed away in the offseason, but he was just a guy that he did stuff you couldn't teach. I would argue that Devin Witherspoon, no matter who coached that guy, and I think Ryan Walters and Aaron Henry did a phenomenal job, and Lovie Smith prior, he still did stuff that you could not teach him how to do. You could literally coach me to do what he did, and I'd never be able to do it, right? So there's that factor. But when you get into the center position or the linebacker position or the quarterback position, and it's really like or the safety position, you're like, okay, those are the plays that I think can make a big jump with some of these films that I think is going to be a huge advantage. I personally would have loved to see the plays again and be like, okay, this is the look that I saw. But what I also think you're going to see counteracted is you're going to see, and Barry Lundy does a phenomenal job of this. Illinois doesn't do a ton. What they do well, but they will run the same 3 or 4 plays out of 4 different formations. And so it doesn't necessarily look the same. The picture I take as a defender from the outset of the snap doesn't look the same. Once it's snapped, it is the same. So now I can go back and say, oh, wait, that is the same. Both those guys are pulling. This guy's going that way. It's just a different picture to me. So those are different things you got to think about. But yes, there are some guys that would swim information, but would just say, don't tell me. I'll block the guy.
Helmet communication's another one. We've had this in the NFL for years. So less of those signs on the sidelines, less of all that, the crazy hand signals.
Yeah,
but
I mean, Michigan cheated, right? I mean, let's just be real. I mean, if we could say that, I think that's what happened. I mean, they were, obviously under investigation, and the full thing of that investigation isn't out yet. How much that actually helped or didn't help, I don't think anybody will ever know. But I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back to say, we've got to fast forward this. I mean, we have the technology there. It's not even a cost thing among programs. I mean, the lowest FBS team and the highest FBS team, there's enough money to actually do this in an economical way that we can get rid of all this nonsense and we can communicate in the helmet. Now, I will say, we were one of the first teams in 2007 to stop really huddling as a defense. So we haven't we didn't huddle because people were going fast and there were spread offenses and it was more effort to huddle than not. And so you did a lot of signaling. Now you're still going to have to signal on the back end because you're not going to huddle, and you're going to have to signal. Sometimes the corner has to say something to the other corner, right? Yep. And Rosiak or whoever is the guy, the linebacker with the different.
Sounds like it'll be Miles Scott, the safety.
Oh, okay, Miles Scott. So he's going to have to tell everybody what's going on, right? Or maybe somebody's going to signal to the front. I don't know what it's going to be like, but it's got to be somebody that can talk.
Yeah. Do you find an advantage at all, or is this just a different way of just keeping the cheating out of it?
I think it keeps the cheating out of it, but I do think it allows us to focus in on let's play football rather than let me get the signal. Okay, this is the play. Okay, let me line up and play. I personally like that. I think it gets rid of some of the nonsense and 4 guys on the sideline doing this in different shirts. I mean, it might have destroyed their jobs, but now they can go do something else more productive than make fake signs during a game.
2-minute timeout. We all call it the 2-minute warning, but the college football's calling it the 2-minute timeout. Brett Bielema thinks this will increase scoring at the end of halves, which was a problem for Illinois last year. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I do think it does increase scoring. So maybe that makes up for, the scoring that gets minimized from the coaching and adjustments on the defensive side of the football. But that being said, I think it makes for an exciting brand of football because it gives you one more opportunity to stop the clock. We've all been there with how many timeouts we got left and how many times can we stop them and can they run out the clock? It basically gives you 40 more seconds of game time because one play clock from the beginning to the end is 40 seconds. And if you're going to play, it's probably going to be 45 seconds at minimum. It gives you 40 to 45 more seconds to make a comeback in, right? And it also gives us TV networks one more guaranteed chance to get a big advertisement in. And that's the reason they're probably doing it more than anything, because they're going to get another guaranteed thing in there. I'm not really sure we need it. They say they wanted to put the 2-minute warning in there because there are rule changes around the clock that change. For instance, going out of bounds can fully stop the clock under 2 minutes, right? Certain penalties with clock runoffs under a minute. So there's different things that happen that's going to be a signal that at least what the officials told me, that these new rules around the clock are in place. I think it was to get another to have more comebacks and also to help the offense and also to get another ad. That's my opinion, but that's what they said.
Jay, I know you also want to talk about another rule change that probably most of us don't think about, the STEM rules. Can you break that down for us?
Well, yeah, if we watched Iowa football last year defensively, so there's defense and offense. Stemming is moving right before a snap into a different formation or different alignment. We saw Iowa do this a lot on 3rd and short. Their linebacker, you can see it on film, Jay Higgins would basically yell something and like shift like that, and everybody would make a quick movement where the lineman would kind of put their hand out forward like that and then move to the left, and it would make the offensive line jump, right? Well, now, if you're doing any kind of non-football move, like pushing your hand or making any noise that is like a cadence signal, like a clap or like a hit or a ready or a set, that will be a penalty against the defense, right?
Yeah, this came up, Wisconsin game last year that people were upset about?
Yeah. We used to call it short yardage flinch, where we would all make a call and act like we were jumping on a signal to get the offensive line to jump and get a illegal procedure or false start, right? And it works. It takes it from a 3rd and 1 to a 3rd and 6. Iowa did this a lot last year. And so this is a big rule change. Defenses are not allowed to do that. We see it also on field goals where guys will shift you'll see the defense help bob his head, and then everybody off of that bob of the head makes a move toward the offensive line. And because they make a move to they jump and everything's off, right? Now, conversely, on the offensive side, it's gotten just wild with some crazy shifts when they get to the line. You'll see a tight end move and different things. It got to the point where they were having guys being able to motion, and then they would do a shift within the motion, which is actually illegal, but they weren't necessarily calling it. So they were, because you can't have two guys in motion at one time, but the offense was saying it was going to be a shift and there was a motion. So there was a gray area. So you have to line up in a true formation. And if you're going to shift, it can't be once you're motioning stuff or once you're kind of into your cadence. You can kind of reset and say, okay, shift. But what they were doing, they were trying to make sudden shifts right before the snap that would make somebody jump. And there wasn't even no real play. It was just to make people jump, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's like you have to shift. There's also a rule in there, if I'm correct, that you can't have like a tight end at a tackle position to start and then shift out to something different, which makes it very difficult on defense to line up correctly. So they were using all of these things to kind of get an advantage. It's the same thing we saw 7-8 years ago when they were trying to get the right personnel in the game, and they would run a sweep with 11 personnel into the boundary, into the sideline. Everybody would run into the sideline, and not everybody would run back on. They'd run 3 or 4 tight ends out of the sideline, and that was the substitution. So then they'd go hurry up, and now you're caught in nickel defense against 3 tight ends because they ran a boundary. So there's all these ways that offenses like to cheat, whether it's substitution, whether it's flopping on penalties, whether it's holding every play, whether it's stemming. So you're going to see this as a point of emphasis. I want you guys to understand it's hard to explain, but when you see sudden shifts and a penalty on the offense or defense, that is a point of emphasis that they're trying to get away from, because it was only trying not to get an advantage, but to create a penalty on the offense or defense, which really isn't what the football game is about. So that's why they changed that. And I think it's a big change that you'll see in some games. I just don't want you to be confused.
I also think they made a point of emphasis about if a player changes jerseys mid-game, right?
Yep, we saw that in Wisconsin, right? So that I believe there was a change in Wisconsin. That's who they threw the football to. Mm-hmm. So they're going to give you, and Jeremy, you would know this, they're going to give you a roster sheet, a flash flip card, basically, of your numbers. If you do change jerseys during the game for any purpose, it's not just reporting to say I'm eligible or ineligible. You have to report to the other coaching staff and say 66 has now become 86 or 86 has now become 66, because it changes. It's hard to identify football players in their garb without their number. So we could have a whole plan for number 86, but if he changes his jersey without telling people, it's like disguising a football player. I can't see his face. That does happen in football games. Illinois, Wisconsin, we saw this happen out. And so there is a rule change against that. And so there's all these things you don't think about that don't happen a lot. I will tell you that they don't happen a lot. But when they do happen, it does create an unfair advantage for a team. And so I do think they are a good rule change and gets out of some of these silly things that we see in the football game.
All right, I want to take a minute to tell you about Home Field Apparel, because they are the premium collegiate apparel brand, and they're based in nearby Indianapolis. Home Field sent me a few shirts, and what I love about them is, of course, they have incredibly comfortable, well-fitting shirts, but they also have officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. And they have more than 180 plus available colleges, including, yes, your Illinois Fighting Illini. They have great gear for the upcoming football season, so for the warm weather games, check out their Script Illini t-shirt, the Orange Ringer tee, the vintage Oski Wawa helmet, or for the fall chillier games, check out the Script Illini hoodie, the Flying Illini hoodie, the Flying Illini quarter zip, and if they're still available, you might want to check out homefieldapparel.com for this. Check out their Script Bomber jacket. It is awesome. Also, don't miss their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. So Home Field is giving away these special football boxes, and these platinum VIP boxes include 3 never-before-seen items from your school that are not available anywhere else. They're curated so fans have new gear to wear all season long, suitable for all weather conditions. And these platinum boxes also include other exclusive items, including a new hat or ringer, a VIP koozie, and a 2024 Platinum Pass, which guarantees 20% off, and early access to your school's football releases through the 2024 season. The football boxes are available on August 9th, so these will sell out quick, so go check them out. Go to homefieldapparel.com to check out their great selection of Illini gear and use code Illini24, that's all capitals, Illini24 for 15% off. That's Illini24 for 15% off at homefieldapparel.com. All right, Jay, I asked for some questions from the fans as we wrap this up, and we got some good ones. So let's dive into it. You covered some of this with the offensive players for the EIU game, but PJ asked, who is Jay most excited to watch in orange and blue this fall? It could be a newcomer, returning guy, who he thinks is set to make a big leap. So anyone else you want to mention?
So I think Zachary Franklin's going to make is who I'm most excited. I think Kapka Jones is going to actually make a flash. I think he's got some deep play potential. He flashed to me in the spring game, making some big catches, and he has some of the elite speed, at least it seems like, on the field that we've struggled to have at the receiver position. I think Caden Fagan has a chance to be one of the more exciting college football players out there. I know that sometimes the big backs aren't seen as exciting, but if you look at Brett Bielema's track record and the size of what he is and what he could do, he could be a human highlight reel of being physical, right? Who else am I excited? I'm excited to see Dylan Rosiak because I'm a linebacker. I think he took big steps as far as attacking the line of scrimmage and playing behind the line of scrimmage. And I believe this is the year for Gabe Akis and Seth Coleman to say, am I an NFL outside linebacker or not? Right? You're going to have the chances to do that. I think on the back end, you don't get voted a captain if you're not playing at a decently high level. And Miles Scott was voted a captain. And so I'm interested to see that. I'm also have heard good things out of Caleb Patterson. I heard he's got great speed. I think he's competing for a spot. So I'm excited to see that. I'm also excited to see a big-time transfer in Brooks, who's also competing for a spot at the corner position. Those are the guys I think that I'm most excited to see play and see what they bring to the table.
I'd just like to see Matthew Bailey healthy, man.
Yes.
Because if they need somebody that can make plays at that safety position. I expect Miles Scott to get a little bit better at that this year. But boy, when Matthew Bailey was on the field, even against Penn State, you could tell, like, it was just, there was a difference when he was on the field.
Yeah, and a whole other thing about Matthew Bailey, you talk about a jawline. That dude's got a serious jawline, and in a good way. You know, my son, who's 12, says that, you know, like mewing and like the jawline's really big right now. And he called some country singer who had the big jaw, a Giga Chad. I don't even know what that means, but he's like, he's the Giga Chad. I was like, what's that mean? He's like, he's got a big jawline. And Matthew Bailey looks like an alpha out there. He's got the jawline, the looks, and everything, right? So I mean, he's ready to roll. That's not usually what we talk about, but I'm saying he looks mean. Like he looks like you got the neck and this and at safety position. I think we like that. So Matthew Bailey, Pride of Moline, let's go Moline Maroons. Only the second best Maroon program in the country behind Champaign Central. But we still love you. Okay.
PJ asked also, curious what you listen to before games to give you some extra juice.
It's so funny that you asked this question because my wife asked me, I was working outside. My son was getting ready to play, and she used music to get ready for games. And my son was getting ready for a junior football game. And she goes, you know, what music is this? I said, I didn't listen to anything. I was born ready. I never need to get hyped up. You know, one thing about me it was like Layman's a self-starter, right? Listen, I had problems getting too hyped up before a game. So my whole thing was this. I want to get winded in warmups. I want to get that out. So I'll go as hard as I can in warmups, and then I'm going to rest for 20 minutes in the locker room, and then I feel really good. I don't need music to hype me up. I don't need Inner Sandman. I don't need Rodney, Adkins. I'm going through hell, whatever, a country. I don't need any of it. I'm ready to go. I'm a little bit different than some people. I get it. I got the natural music, but I'm so locked in on what I have to do. I get 12 times to do this all year. I need to have as in Braveheart, I need to have my wits about me, right? So like, that's what I wanted to have, my wits about me. I'm going to be blasting something in my ear. However else wants to get ready, I don't care. That's just my style.
Woodsy, why do defensive linemen rotate a lot, but not offensive linemen?
Well, that's a really good question. So it has to do with a lot of things, but first and foremost, offensive linemen will not run and strain to the ball like a defensive lineman will. Okay, so defensive linemen have to finish to the football and have to do movements in a reactionary way, which are much more tiresome than knowing where I'm going. So on a zone play, an offensive lineman knows I'm running the track on the zone block. I'm trying to do that. A defensive lineman is fighting through that offensive lineman, trying to find the football and react to it, and then try to get in on the play with effort, right? And so the amount of effort on a defensive lineman to really get to the quarterback or get in the backfield or get on the play or pursue the ball is a big requirement. And that's why you'll see them roll out every 3 or 4 plays, because even if you have a Johnny Newton in there, and Johnny Newton, and he might be an exception, but Johnny Newton at 50% is not going to be good as your second team guy going at 100%, right? And so you want to keep those guys fresh. I will say too, offensive linemen just in general, if you were to look how much ground they cover compared to defensive linemen in a game, it's drastically different because it's a different position. You know, even on a pass play, they're basically just setting and the ball's done and then it's done, right? They're not really going to chase after the play unless they're in the hurry up mode.
Yeah. All right, Garrett, who would you have had as the green dot helmet as an upperclassman on your team? How would that have affected the way you played, and how much of a difference can coaches make on the outcome of game with this technology?
Well, I would have had the green dot, number one. If I was playing, if it was somebody else, I'd probably give it to Kevin Mitchell at safety. He was a guy that really knew everything that was going on. I probably wouldn't give it to Britt, because Britt would just be hitting people. No, I'm just kidding. Britt could have it. But
next year, yeah,
he would have it the next year. Britt would be probably too busy talking to the other team, tell them how bad they were. But anyway, long story short is I think it's only going to help. I think it's long overdue that we have this. Again, I think it was spurned on by the whole Michigan scandal. And now it's a good thing that we have it, and we can move on from all these silly signs and different things that we were doing.
All right. Andrew had a pretty long question about the Illini defensive front, but basically I'll simplify it. What kind of front gap scheme do you think works best with this talent on the defensive front for Illinois? And obviously, Jay, that can probably change based on the opponent too. But.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. That's a really good question. So we largely played a 5-man front in 2022, and that's because I think if you look at the top 11 players that we had, probably 5 of them were good defensive linemen, outside linebackers, and so they wanted to have their best football players on the field. A lot of times you can have guys 2-gap when they're really good. I think Keith Randolph, one of the better 2-gap players we've had. Johnny was really good at that, but Johnny unique is that he could really get, for a big guy, penetrate gaps and beat double teams and different things. Where Keith was more of a, I can take on 2 guys and hold the point. And then Calvin Avery, you know, he was a 2-gap, and Denzel Daxon more 2-gap on the nose and kind of filling it. I think when you're smaller, it's easier to play gaps, right? Rather than try to just 2-gap it. It's very difficult to 2-gap. Probably the gold standard of 2-gap defense is always the Pittsburgh Steelers and New England under Bill Belichick, and also Alabama under Nick Saban. They had the guys to do it. You have to have unique guys to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if we just 1-gap guys during this time, because I'm not sure we have the bodies right now or the depth right now to be 2-gap football players up front. But I also think we got some linebackers that can run and play multiple gaps. We're not just 1-gap guys. So we'll see. I know I'm talking kind of in circles there, but it really determines your personnel determines that.
John asks, how does Illinois respond schematically to teams that attack our interior defensive line?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and probably this, for some reason, older people say the $64,000 question. I think that was a show back in the day. I'll say it's the $1 million question, right? Because if you can't stop the run game up the middle, you will see it over and over. It's the most basic play in football, right? And you will see it over and over and over again. So there's a couple of things I think that I would do. Number one, you can play a 5-man front with a nose and bring those 2 defensive ends, not the outside linebackers, but those 4 and 5 techniques in closer, where say you can't run up the middle, you've got to at least bounce it out a little bit, right? So it can't be just straight up the field. Number 2, I think you'll see what we call a quick Texas stunt. A quick Texas is basically where you take those 2 4 and 5 techniques and you kind of slant them to the outside, and you loop in Seth Coleman and you loop in Gabe Akis to be in the interior with you. It's great for stopping, like it's usually used for stopping a quarterback draw or something, but it can also be used to gunk up the middle, right? And when you're undersized, you're going to have to stunt a little bit more to stop people. I don't think they stunted in the interior all that much because they could beat people one-on-one. I think we're going to see some more stunts in the interior to try to give us I think a guy like Bray might lack in size, but maybe a little bit quicker than some, right? I think Seth Coleman certainly doesn't have a bunch of weight in his britches, but man, he's athletic and can bend, right? So let's use him. Where I think Gabe Akis really thrives as a wrestler background in these compact situations of like, I can battle you one-on-one in a phone booth. I'd rather battle you in a phone booth than chase you outside around the end, right? So there's different, how do we put those players in those positions where they're good? For me, I'm really good in between the tackles. I hope I never see the tailback in space. I hope I tackle you, or I hope, you're coming off a tackle, I can make it easy. I just don't want to see you in space because I'll probably lose.
Right. I just find how they're going to use Gabe Akis so intriguing because we did see it against Wisconsin, him kind of move inside. Sure. And I do think like his next level position could be in that 3 technique or something like that. So I wonder how they use him, a guy like Ezekiel Holmes who's changing positions. That'll be fascinating to watch. Mike asks, with defensive line being the assumed weakness of the team, do you have any concerns that having a good but somewhat undersized linebacker in Rosiak will make us more vulnerable to the run? It feels like teams could pound us without much resistance.
Yeah, I think everybody knows that we could get pounded. And so just like that last question, I think Rosiak plays a lot bigger than he is. I don't see him getting pushed around a lot. Like I did not see him get, tossed out. You don't have to be a neck roll Dana Howard linebacker to be physical. I mean, sometimes that helps. But I'm more concerned about, I think James Kreutz is a very instinctual player, and I think he plays good on the edge. I want to see his growth when somebody runs right at him because he's not as stout as some other linebackers. I think Odeluga can be stout and certainly has the body to be like that. But that's not to say James Kreutz is a bad football player. I'm just saying if there's a place that he might get attacked, it's running right at him. Brian Urlacher was known as a great football player. His biggest weakness is probably when you ran right at him, right? And so I think that's where Ray Lewis was great when he ran right at him, but if you ran around him, he wasn't as good as Urlacher, and he certainly wasn't as good at pass coverage at Urlacher, right? So every player has strengths and weaknesses. How do we put our guys, and this is the coach's job, right? How do we put our guys in the best position for them to be successful? So we might not have better players than everybody else. We'll have better players than some teams, but can we put our guys in a position to be successful? That's what Iowa's done for the years. That's what Wisconsin's done for years. And they develop to that position. And then you can start playing against better athletes because you know your position inside out.
Pat asked, what can we expect from Daniel Brown, the JUCO All-American, who kind of plays inside linebacker, outside linebacker? He's been out with a back injury from what we saw during training camp. So I don't know, Jay, if he's going to make an impact right away, but 6'1", 240, versatile piece. If he is healthy, what can he add with Seth and Gabe and Alec Bryant?
So I think he was a great pickup on a JUCO. I really liked that he was highly, highly productive on a JUCO. I think he had the record for sacks in that JUCO league. But I would see him right now. And again, I don't have any semblance of a depth chart. I don't know, but I see it being difficult with Coleman and Akis to be an every down guy when those guys have played a lot. Do I think he could be in, what they call the NASCAR package where they get a bunch of guys that are fast in there and Daniel Brown can be a sack guy? And that's a lot of times where outside linebackers start. They start to get on the pass rush stuff and say, hey, just get really good at this. The run game stuff we'll get to. So I think he'll be involved in that. I think he seems to have a knack to be a pass rusher, and there is a knack and a skill and an art to being a good pass rusher. If you have that, you'll find your way on the field in critical moments.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a sub-package guy. I think he can be a bigger version of what Kenenna Odeluga has been for them the last couple of years, right? And James Kreutz got used in that role a little bit last year too. Gene said, if you could add one player from your playing days, Jay, as an Illini to this team to make them a better team, other than yourself, who would it be, why, and what would he bring to the team that they're currently lacking?
Oh, man, that's a really, really good question. I'm going to throw one out there that people probably don't think about, and that's Chris Norwell. Chris Norwell, a really, really good 3 technique. Chris Norwell, recruited out of Cincinnati Anderson High School, and the same year I was as a tight end. Harry Heastan told me that he would have been a first-round NFL tackle if he would stayed on the offensive side, but they so needed him on defense. He ended up being a 4-year starter on the defensive side of the football. I remember we played Ohio State, played Nick Mangold, the center. Nick Mangold, was a senior. We were sophomores. He thought Chris Norwell was one of the best, defensive tackles he had played against in the Big Ten. Now, Andrew Norwell, his brother, went on to be an Ohio State lineman and be at one time the highest guard in the NFL, highest paid guard in the NFL for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But Chris Norwell, a guy on the defensive tackle, knowing that the inexperience we have there, Chris Norwell would be a great addition on this football team. Not a knock on anybody else. He would be a great addition to this football team, 4-year starter at Illinois. And one of the reasons that I was able to have so much success, because, at 6'7", 320 was a really good player for us.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of the right way to go. I mean, you couldn't go wrong with like Richard or Vontae, just talent. they elevate you.
Sure.
I like that answer.
Yeah. So people don't think about Chris a lot on that team, but I can tell you anybody that actually watched that season or was on that team would tell you he was an intricate part of that team.
Nick, is there more pressure playing at home for Illinois than playing on the road?
It seems like that. It seems like, and I just hate to say it, but because I'm an Illinois fan, but there seems to be a certain cynicism of here we go again sometimes at Illinois. Of
course.
Right? We've had a lot of heartbreak, and I'm certainly not bashing on the fans. It is what it is. I mean, we've been taught not to get our hopes up. And so I think it's hard being an Illinois fan sometimes. And so sometimes there is frustration, especially when you have a team that wants to be dedicated to running the football and people want you to see to air it out sometimes, in college football. So sometimes I think Illinois plays looser on the road because it's like, okay, who cares? And so, but I think that's maturing as a program and as a football team. It's like, we've got to first take care of what we do at home and got to get the fans behind us in a way. Do I think the level of apathy under Beckman and Lovey was way worse than it is now? 100%. And I think you could feel, I think there is a certain excitement now around Saturdays, and they're doing a great job from the experience all over the place to $4 hot dogs and everything else to make it like that. If nothing else, give people cheap food and beer and they'll be happier and less apathetic.
Definitely. Mike, how does the Illini football team turn the corner in recruiting to raise their floor to compete at a higher and more consistent level in the Big Ten?
That's a good question. First and foremost, I think we know we're not going to get the best of the best recruits all the time, but we have to win our fair share for the positions that we're trying to develop in our scheme. So developing and recruiting to our scheme, number one, but you have to have continuity at your coordinators in your scheme to recruit like that, right? So year 3 under Barry Lunny, similar scheme under Aaron Henry, has to change a little bit from Ryan Walters, but really the 4th year of the scheme there and the 3rd year of the offensive scheme. So you kind of start recruiting to that. I also think that our coordinators have been great recruiters when we've gotten good football players. Mike Loxley, I think Barry Lunny showed we could do in bringing Zachary Franklin out of the portal, right? I mean, he had the relationship there. And I think a big reason why Aaron Henry got the job was because of his recruiting ties in Florida. I really do. I think that's a huge thing when it comes to, I think your coordinators have to recruit. And I think we're always going to be a developmental program for at least for the near future. So how do we develop guys? How do we get guys to stay? Now, we had a lot of success in guys staying early on, more transfers this year. But how do we get guys to stay? And I think this is year 4 under Brett. We said, hey, we'll see if this is a developmental program or not.
What I would add to that, of course, NIL plays a big role, and Illinois has improved that here recently. I think you saw that. But the embrace of the transfer portal, I think, is important, Jay. You have to get good prep players to your scheme, develop them. Those guys are really with the Caden Fagans, Malik Elzy's of the world. Those guys are always going to be so important. But you do have to go get some difference makers that you might not be able to get as preps. You might not be able to get a bunch of 4-star prospects. But if I can get J.C. Davis and Terrence Brooks and Zachary Franklin in the portal or Luke Altmaier, I just saw an embrace of the transfer portal a little bit more that I think is really important for Illinois, that I don't build a program just on transfers. You still got to be developing guys like Brandon Henderson and Josh Kreutz and all these guys. But if I need to go get somebody, maybe the best way of getting talent, I think Lovey showed this a little bit.
Yeah.
You get a different level of talent in the portal that maybe you don't get them out of high school.
I think that's a phenomenal point. I think we could see we've seen the rise and fall of programs based on the portal. We've seen Clemson go from a perennial top 4 program, and Dabo been very opposed to the portal, right? And we've seen them kind of drop out of being a top 4, top 10 program. We've seen other teams embrace it and shoot up. Washington would have not been a top 14 without Michael Penix in the portal, right? And we've seen other teams, Lincoln Riley.
I know it's not a good example this week, but Florida State.
Right. There you go. Like it changes the game. So yeah, I would definitely say portal. That's a great addition to that. And finding those, I think, and Brett's mentioned this, always in any conversation recruiting, no matter what they decide, on a high note, because you are recruiting them for 4 or 5 years. You might not be able to talk to them, but you've got to have a window that if it does open up in the portal, you have a relationship there. And I think that's really important. That way, and you got to recruit.
Might as well make it like use that 2-3 years of recruiting them to your advantage, maybe down the line, right? Like
sure, take all your lumps at Iowa and come over to us. We're fine. So that's, and not every portal situation works out, but you just named off maybe 5 of our best players that are portal guys. I mean, you just Altmaier and Franklin and
Dennis
Briggs. I mean, you named off a bunch of guys right there. There's like, oh shoot, Brooks, that are real ball players.
Yeah. Just a few more, Jay. Russ, should Illinois bring back the uniform combo from your playing days? The mix of the Denver Broncos and New York Giants.
I mean, I've heard people say we had the most swag of any uniform. Now, I don't know if they were classic style or whatnot. It was like the Nike uniform back then. I mean, I think we kind of based them off of Clemson and what CJ Spiller was wearing, and we kind of had that kind of feel. But if you look, we had the same like jersey style as like Mizzou that year. They kind of had the same jerseys as us, but it was just the Nike style that was in. And I think it had a lot of swag to it. I liked the jersey. I think we could have had an updated helmet sooner. Like we still had the old school Illinois before they changed helmets all the time. We had like
people know I am not a big fan, Jay, because it's unoriginal. It's just the Giants. I like the black guy because it's classic. It's right. Original. I know people love that uniform because 2001, 2007, like good season.
Well, and I'll say we were the only football team with the state on their team, their state's name on their helmet, right? So that's a unique thing, but it does remind me of the Giants. It will always make me with Jeff Hostetler and winning the 1991 Super Bowl or whatever it was, So, I like the throwback jerseys of those. I don't think we'll ever. They were too new school though to be really a throwback now. So, I don't think you'll ever see them again.
Andrew, was there ever a certain quarterback you never got to, but just wanted to destroy during your playing days, NFL or college?
I really wanted to get to Chad Henne. I could never get past Jake Long to actually hit him, not because he's a bad guy, but because they were good. I did have an opportunity to hit Troy Smith. People don't realize how good Troy Smith was. Probably one of the best college quarterbacks I ever played against, that 2006 Ohio State game. I know wasn't huge. He was out of Glenville, I believe, but he was not a great pro, but had a decent pro career for the Ravens, but so athletic. They had Ted Ginn Jr., they had Hartline, they had a bunch of different players on that squad. And he was a guy that I got to tackle. One guy that destroyed me that never played quarterback in the pros, but did play in the pros was Michael Robinson in 2005. I about died trying to tackle him. He was like a fullback. He was literally huge. Go look him up, what he looked like on running the option for Penn State and running quarterback run and draw and stuff. So those were guys I wanted to hit and never got to. I hit them, but those would probably be my answers. Did you
ever get to Chase Daniel?
Chase would throw the ball too quick.
Yeah,
I think one time he held on to it. I think I tackled him one time because he held on, because usually the ball was out in 2 or 3 seconds. Yeah. They were one of the first in the all empty, just Jeremy Macklin, 2 tight ends, and just throw the ball over the field. I remember I was probably the most gassed I've ever been. It's the first game of the year, but like they ran like 13 plays in 3 minutes. And they would make you run to sideline to back and then cover the tight ends. We stopped him for a field goal that drive. That was a unique time because we didn't score a touchdown. I was so gassed. I came out, I was like, I'm not taking myself out because I never know when I'm going back in, never get Wally pipped, So I was like, I'm not never taking myself out. I'm not good enough to take myself out. But that would gas you because they would get rid of the ball so quick in that offense. It was difficult.
All right, last one for you, Jay. Appreciate you doing this. Matthew, after a bowl win, which Illini player would you like to see riding on which other Illini player's shoulders to celebrate?
That's an interesting one. I'll go with J.C. Davis on Aiden Lawfrey's shoulders. Let's see if the Mighty Mouse can do that and then switch it up. I'd like to see that. Do I think
GCMS weight program prepared him for that?
Yeah, the Falcons, right? So I doubt that's going to happen. I think it's probably going to be J.C. Davis with Luke Altmaier on top, but I'd love to see the mix and match right there.
Yeah, Altmaier like having a good year would be, because he went through a lot and he's talked about it. Like last year it had some really good and some really bad. So to have him see that moment would be pretty cool.
Here's the thing. I think Altmaier can have a surprise year in which you're like, okay, you had 13 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. I think if he gets to 25 touchdowns, and keeps that interception mark under 10 or at 10, he could have a special. When's the last time we had somebody throw for 25 touchdowns? Maybe Juice. I know Kirk Kittner had that in a season.
That might have happened 2 or 3 times in Illinois history. Yeah.
Maybe, right? I mean, so it's like if he throws 25 touchdowns, that's 2 a game. Guys, I think he's a legit guy to watch out for. I think that's possible with the weapons we have on the football field. And if we score 30 points a game, he could do that. So a lot of it rides on the offense. I can see Luke being a 25-10 guy and really blowing it up. And then you're thinking, how do we keep Barry Lunny here to stay here, right? Because, if you put those numbers up in Illinois with the schedule we play, there's going to be people calling for you.
Yeah, especially if Arkansas, his alma mater, changes coaches. Like that's a concern, I would imagine.
Yeah, we've got concerns, so.
J Leman, you are the goods. 2 games on Big Ten Network this week, including Illinois against Eastern Illinois. J Leman, thank you, and I can't wait to talk about an actual game next week.
Let's go, boys. Look forward to it every week.
Thank you to J Leman. Thank you guys for listening to the Illini Inquirer Podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, hello, YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to us, and hit the notifications bell. We always appreciate the support. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate you guys. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.